Hey everyone, welcome to Two Who's Review, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm Alex,
I'm Fitz.
and today we're going to be discussing Rose 2005.
Ooh-wee. Yeah, just get rid of that. That was terrible.
I absolutely will not.
Okay, well, fantastic.
Okay, so it's the first episode of the revived series, the first episode of the Ninth Doctor. The episode that was so successful, the BBC greenlit a second series immediately after it aired.
I was not aware of that, and yet I am not surprised.
No, yeah, like they did a good job in the marketing before this episode aired. They did a
Yeah.
big hype push for, hey, Doctor Who's coming back. Remember
Yeah,
that
they did.
thing that all of Britain loves? Well, you're going to love it again.
Yeah, they did a pretty big advertising blitz. I mean, because I was, how old would I have been? Like 10, I think. But I can still remember that they had the ads playing on the ABC, and I think even in the months leading up to it, my dad found one online once, and they were really, they were pushing it. Um, so yeah, they did a good job. So it's not that surprising. I think that when it came on ABC, it was advertised, the show that caught the attention of 10 million British viewers. So yeah, it's unsurprising.
Okay, I've got a couple of fun things. First of all, I've got the plot summary from IMDb here to
Mm,
read out.
yep.
When ordinary shop worker Rose Tyler meets a mysterious stranger called the Doctor, she is drawn into his strange and dangerous world. Her life will never be the same again. Rose is a shop assistant at Harrods and finds herself in the top floor storage room when the mannequins seem to come to life.
Spooky stuff.
Yeah, uh, it's about right. I'm also trying to find. I know that there's a website. There's a website where people can like rank episodes of Doctor
Hmm.
Who, and you can see like
Hmm.
the order of everything.
Hmm.
I I'm trying to find it. I don't remember what it's called. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep looking for this in the background.
That's cool.
So do you wanna start with like the episode itself?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So yeah, first episode. Um, and given that it was, Doctor Who being the property that it is, I think they were pretty aware with what they were dealing with. They could afford, I guess, to be, I suppose, a bit bold with how the show was styled and how it was written. The fact that they were kind of, they were starting with a bit of a clean slate with a new Doctor, new companion. Um, they make it work pretty well. Um, and even smaller details with how even how it's directed is quite interesting. I because I literally just finished watching this episode because I wanted it to be sort of fresh in the noggin.
Yeah.
And and there's this one bit where when the Doctor's giving his first kind of explanation to Rose about who he is and how he feels. There's this
We're
one
talking
long
about
tracking.
yeah, we're talking about
Um,
the scene where it's like, I can feel the earth moving, that
yeah,
whole bit.
yeah, yeah. But right, like literally right before that, when they're walking out of, I think it's out of her house, and they're just walking through space. They're space on Earth, by the way. I should make that clear, not
Yeah, yeah.
space in space. But when they're doing that, they have this long tracking shot, which I didn't notice. It's certainly not the first time I watched it. In fact, I only did notice it just then. I thought, oh, that's kind of cool that they're sort of taking those sort of stylistic risks. Um, the reason why I wanted to bring that up, though, is to segue into a funny little couple of quirks that I found with the episode. So, as I said, I think they did try to be a bit bold with it. Again, new Doctor, new companion, kind of wiping the slate clean. We're not given a lot of information as to who the Doctor is or what the show is in detail about. We're just kind of dropped into this scenario. Um,
Yeah.
but I noticed that if you look at the way uh, some of how it's written, and certainly some of how it's edited, it's a very, I think it's quite a 2000s British show. I mean, granted, I don't know, I don't know whether this is really like an area of expertise of mine, but I just watch it And I especially look at the way it's edited. And again, these are just tiny little details, but like at the beginning where they have just these sort of these shots of London just to to establish um where it's taking place. Obviously, I think they even have a couple of quick zooms. It's like, oh, here we are, we're in London. Um, that seems to be a quirk that's very sort of the time. The one bit which I keep laughing at it when the fake Mickey is talking to Rose and they have the really weird quick edits of honey babe sweetheart, and I'm like, you know, it's so strange. But again, I think it's very of the period.
Oh yeah.
Oh, and of course the burping bin. I mean,
I mean
like
that is very much a mid 2000s joke
it
right
it
there.
is it is, and what the thing is when you put it all together, when you put the editing together with this weird little joke, like I see those sort of stylistic influences. I see them in shows that are as diverse as I don't know, is it like Sorry I've Got No Head, all the way to something like How Clean Is Your House? Like there's a very 2000s British shows, and you can see it. Like the burping bin, that is a joke that looks like it could literally have been ripped straight out of a, Sorry I've Got No Head episode. It's so weird.
Just before we continue,
Yeah.
I found the website that I was looking for. It's called the timescales.com.
Oh, nice. Nice.
And they've actually got a quite a few little stats here. I thought we could go over.
Yeah, sure.
Because we might be able to make this like a regular thing before we start. So I might edit this a little differently, but like we
Yeah,
might be able
yeah.
to do this before we start discussing an episode. We go over these ratings and see if we agree with any of them or not.
Yeah.
So Rose has on the timescales.com. Rose has an average rating of 7.1 out of 10,
Mm-hmm.
which I I think that's about right.
I must
I'm not sure about you, but
yeah.
I think that while this episode does a great job uh, reintroducing Doctor Who as a story by itself,
Mm-hmm.
it's not amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's just me, and also it introduces Rose Tyler, who we'll get to.
Yeah.
But what do you think? 7.1 overall rating for Rose.
So do you mean like just in the episode or like overall as a character?
Oh, this is rating the episode.
Oh yeah, like how
There's
she's
it's an
introduced them.
average of it looks like there were 252 votes,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they've come to an average rating of 7.1 out of 10 for this episode.
Right. Um. Yeah, she works quite fine as a character. I think she's quite
Again, we're
likable.
talking about the episode itself, like overall, like this as a story.
Oh, pardon me.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
get to discussing Rose as a
Yes.
character
Yes.
later on,
Well,
but
yeah. Yeah. So
7.1 for the episode Rose.
yeah. So the episode itself, yeah, I understand what you mean because it's not, especially when you compare to what the revival series was going to become, how good it was going to be. I think it's not amazing. It's not bad, certainly, but it's not like the level of quality you would see even, getting into this season. And I know I
Yeah,
said before that they tried to be a bit bold by not giving us too much information. Um, Even if that's true, um, I think this as an episode, it demonstrates a show still trying to find its feet. Now that makes sense
yeah,
because
yeah,
it's a pilot. That I think that's just expected of a lot of pilot shows. But again, and I know I mentioned it's kind of a joke, but even the weird little editing quirks and the fact that they have a burping bin joke. Again, this is a very for me, it is a very 2000s British TV show like that stuff for them to do. So I think it's was the writers and the showrunners attempts to again find their feet, find the creative direction they were trying to go for, and I don't think it didn't stumble massively in that area for me. It
no,
wasn't.
no.
Yeah, it didn't. these quirks that I mentioned, they weren't enough to take away from the main story. They weren't
No,
really
like
that
this is the kind of
distracting.
episode. This is the kind of episode where it's like, it's not going to turn anyone away if it's your first experience, but it doesn't really hold up to what the show would and really sort of has done.
Yep.
Um,
Um,
there's also on timescales there are there are places where you can individually rank various aspects of the
yeah.
episode.
Hmm.
So it has a 6.8 average rating for plot,
Hmm.
which I think is fair. Like, there's not a lot of story here. It's mainly about introducing, like I said, reintroducing the world, reintroducing the Doctor, introducing the new
Yep.
companion, and as a result, the actual story of the episode kind of has to take a back seat. So 6.8 seems fair
Yep.
to me on that one.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
has
Fair
an
enough.
acting rating of 8.3 out of 10.
8.3 for the acting.
The acting, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't really fault that. I don't think any of the performances in this are bad. I do think that when the Autons start unleashing in the mall, some of the extras can be a bit over the top.
Yeah. Yeah.
There
I
was a
kind of
weird
get that.
like specifically when Clive gets shot, like the initial reaction from from his family is fine, but then like as they're running away, it does feel very melodramatic as they're doing that. Like,
Yeah. I think. And again, you could argue maybe that was just the show trying to find its feet. Maybe they were trying to be like what the classic era was, because like if you look at extras and side characters in classic Doctor Who, a lot of the acting is not amazing. Um,
mm,
but I do, yeah, I do agree with you there. It's not. You could argue it requires a bit of polishing.
yeah,
How it stands. Um, the
it
main
has a
cast. Oh, sorry, you go. Pardon me.
Oh no, we'll get to the main cast in our
We
own
will.
section,
Yeah.
but it has an effects rating of 6.4 out of 10, which I think could probably be a bit lower.
What? Sorry, what was the rating again? Pardon me.
Effects 6.4.
Yeah.
Like
Look.
this is still 2005. The show
Yeah.
hasn't. I mean, for the longest time, the show's never had an amazing budget, and it's going to start looking a
Yeah.
lot
Yeah.
better as we approach like the 2010 era. That's when it starts looking a lot better. But like in particular, stuff like the when Mickey's got his hand stuck on the bin, that
Oh yeah.
effect is really bad.
Yeah.
It not only does it look like his fingers are sort of melting into the plastic, but there's even like a continuity error. Like when he so obviously he puts his hands on the bin, right?
Hmm.
So his left hand is on the left side of the bin and his right hand is on the right side of the bin. And he does a thing where he sort of turns around behind him. So the strands of plastic that are gripping his hands, they cross over. But then in the next shot, they're aligned again. So it's the effect in that shot, you would assume that he's put his left hand on the right hand side of the bin and his right hand on the left side of the bin.
Mm.
And also the nesting consciousness doesn't look
Yeah.
amazing in this. That's the other thing, obviously.
Yeah.
That's the sore thumb
Yeah. It's
of
not
the episode.
it's not amazing. Oh, and also Plastic Mickey. You could argue, how could she not tell that this is clearly an alien pretending to be her boyfriend, because he looks like he's
Yeah.
made of plastic.
Well, I'm torn on Plastic Mickey actually because like
Mhm.
the first shot in the car,
Mhm.
like when the sunlight is on him,
Mhm.
it's very obvious. But then like in the
In
restaurant,
the
it looks a
restaurant,
lot
yeah.
better. And like
Mm.
the shot when the Doctor is holding Mickey's Plastic Mickey's head,
Mhm.
and the head opens its eyes and says, "Don't think that's going to stop me." That shot is genuinely like it's really impressive. I don't know how they did that. Because you can see like there's no space under the neck, so
It probably was some form of CG, which
well,
given the yeah.
it obviously was like I don't think they would have decapitated
Well, yeah, of course.
Noel Clark.
Um, which I think, yeah, you're not wrong to point out that that effect was kind of impressive given all the other effects in the episode, which are not great. I'm myself, and maybe this is some of my sort of classic era bias coming out here, but I'm willing to forgive a fair bit of that. I don't
Oh, me
blame you
too.
or anyone else for pointing that out, but it doesn't take away the effect of the whole experience. And I think it's really curious, but in the Russell T Davies era, they did this weird thing, I think, with the way it was edited, the way it was directed, even some of the cinematography, excuse me, um, where it's still quite stylized, it's quite strange, but it's not unbelievable. It's kind of like a weird middle ground between this, again, the really strange qualities of the classic era, but making it more sort of modern and cinematic. I think they actually got
Yeah,
that balance quite well, and I know I complained about the weird bit of editing when with Plastic Mickey when they're at the restaurant, but
well, it is weird.
then again, and you'll probably have a better memory of this than I do, but even in an episode like The Unicorn and the Wasp, don't they have like really weird quick edits when the guy's kind of trying to hide the fact that he's this giant wasp thing in a human suit? Um,
I don't
hold
know if
on.
they have like as many like quick cuts as like that section. I know there
Yeah.
is like an effect there, but I don't remember it that well. I suppose we'll get to that
Yeah,
episode
we will.
in a while. There's one final
Mhm.
ranking on the timescales,
Yeah.
and it's replay. So like how how good it is on a rewatch, I suppose.
Hmm.
Like how replayable it is, and that's got a 7.4 for that one.
Um, yeah, no, I think it's
It's not
a,
the kind of episode that I think many people would like just sit down and watch like you know
mm,
on its own. I don't think many people would go, "Oh,
oh
I'm in
yeah,
the
I've
mood for some Doctor
got to
Who.
go
I
get
really want to watch Rose right now."
yeah.
But like, given that it is like the first episode of the revival,
Mhm.
uh, and it sets up a lot, like you're not gonna skip it when you're doing a rewatch binge, basically.
Yeah, yeah. It's not yeah, you're right in the sense that it doesn't quite give a picture of the quality of the writing to come, and it's not, I think, something where people say, "Oh yeah, Rose," that's an instantly recognizable episode. Um, but there's a reason for that. There isn't a heap of things going on, and it's not, as we say, sort of reaching the potential that it would get to later on in the series. However, given what it is, I actually think it's pretty good.
Oh
Um,
no, me too.
they
There
they
is
they
there's
were
actually
able.
one extra there's actually one extra thing here on the timescales, and I find it weird. So like it tells you if the episode has a prerequisite story.
Hmm.
So if you need to have watched something before going into this one. And curiously, 1 out of 127 raters say this story requires a previous story, which like is just very much untrue.
Yeah,
You don't need to have watched any of the past Doctor Who to watch this,
no, I
as
don't.
evidenced by the many people who have started their Doctor Who adventures with this story. You don't need to see any of the other ones.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it again it does its job quite well. You're not given too much information, but the info that you are given does sort of give a good insight into who these characters are, what's important to them, what they care about. The Doctor, I think in particular, um, is written quite well. I'm glad that they emphasized his alienness, like the fact that he says to Rose, he says something to the effect of, I'm only here, um, just to make sure that, you stupid people on this planet don't mess anything up for yourselves. I'm paraphrasing greatly there, but that's basically what he said, and that's a good thing because I think, um, both in terms of character and even theme, that's an important thing to foreground for the Doctor.
Yeah, well,
Um,
let's talk about the Doctor while
yeah,
we're on the
sure.
subject.
Hmm.
Obviously, Chris Eccleston, the Ninth Doctor. Um, actually, before we move on quickly, I just want to say that no, never mind, forget it.
Hmm.
Because this website also shows you which episodes are the highest rated in their own individual series, and this episode's kind of in the mid tier, which isn't really important information, but if
Hmm.
that makes the final edit, so be it. Chris Eccleston, Ninth Doctor. This is his only series of the show. He didn't come back after this one.
Hmm.
There's a lot of stuff that's come out about behind the scenes
Yeah,
reasons for that happening.
yeah,
I don't think this is the time to go into any of that.
yeah.
Everyone if you're interested in learning more, look it up. He's done a lot of interviews about it since.
Yeah.
His relationship with with Doctor Who in general has clearly improved over the years because he's now doing the Big Finish
Yeah, he's
audio
done quite a lot
dramas.
of them.
Yeah, and I did read a thing that like the main reason he decided to do those is largely because of the good relationship that he had with the Doctor Who fan base,
Hmm.
which is good to hear. Like, it
Yeah,
was very likely that he might have ended up being ostracized by the Doctor Who fandom for, abandoning the show so quickly. And I'm glad
yeah,
that didn't happen.
yeah,
It helps that he gives an amazing performance.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Certainly one of the highlights of the episode. Maybe the highlight actually.
I,
Um,
I would definitely agree with that. I think
yeah,
the episode also knows that because he's used so sparingly in the first two acts.
yeah,
Like, we
yeah.
have, like, the majority of the story is just Rose trying to figure out who this guy is. And,
Building up the mystery. And they do that
yeah,
pretty well.
yeah, and he's only really in, like, two sequences before the restaurant bit where he's in the rest of the episode. He's in the bit at the department store, and he's only like in like 2 minutes of that. And then he has the section where he goes to the Powell estate, and then
Mm.
gets the mannequin arm, does the whole speech at the end, and that's probably only like 6 minutes of the episode total in the first like 25 minutes that he's in.
Yeah, no,
It's
that
really
sounds about
it's really
right.
strange thinking of this episode as Doctor Light,
Yeah.
but it almost is.
No,
It's
I think
weird.
that's a pretty fair
Yeah, and
assumption.
I just realized that Russell D Davies would do the same thing again with Tennant's first episode. He's
Oh yeah.
in that sparingly at the start, and then he's in it a lot towards the end. It's a really surprisingly effective way to introduce a new Doctor.
Yes. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Um, it's sort of allowing the characters to sort of absorb and process that this new strange individual has come into their lives, and building up some of the mystery and the anticipation. Um, I mean, especially with Christopher Eccleston's case, because this is the new series. But even as you say with Tennant, because you wonder, oh, what's this new Doctor going to be like? Are they going to be kind of crazy? Are they going to be whimsical? What kind of flavor, Doctor are we getting here?
Yeah, yeah.
Also, you could argue it helps in certainly in both Tennant and Eccleston's first episodes. Um, there's not really any room for post regeneration madness. Certainly not with
Mm, mm.
Eccleston because he's gone through I think his regeneration. I mean, you could argue that it must have been fairly recent because he goes to the mirror and checks himself out, and obviously you assume he hasn't had a chance to do that yet. But they don't really do a lot of post regeneration madness with him, and they don't
Yeah,
really
it's
with Tennant either.
it's a weird situation, yeah, because
Mm,
like he clearly it's clearly the first time he's seen himself because he does comment on the ears.
yeah.
So like I've always tried to figure out exactly what the timeline was. So obviously
Mm,
at the end of Day of the Doctor we see the War Doctor regenerate into Chris Eccleston.
mm,
Presumably from there this is a Doctor who's been through the Time War.
yeah.
He's dealing with the fact that, well, at least he thinks at this point, he's destroyed all of his own
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
It's very fresh, which makes
Mm,
the references to the Time War, the fleeting ones anyway, that we get in this really hit home when he's yelling at the Nestine consciousness
yeah.
going like, I couldn't save your
Save
lot, I
any of
couldn't
them.
save
Yeah.
any of them. That was like 2 days ago for him at that point. So
Yeah.
it's insane. But
Mm,
we do also have that sequence with Clive where he's
mm,
showing Rose all of the documents and the photos of the Ninth Doctor,
yeah.
which shouldn't exist yet. If this is his first adventure in that with that face,
Yeah. I mean.
so there's two possible interpretations
Mm,
of like the sequence of events. He goes to the department store. He gets the signal from the from the Autons in the department store, deals with that, tracks them down the next day, takes the mannequin arm, goes off, and maybe has like a thing of like maybe he goes away at that point maybe and does all the other adventures. But that doesn't really make sense because he'd be focused on dealing with the Autons in the here and now. The theory that I like a lot better about the timeline is he regenerates, he goes and does this basically entire episode. Then at the end when Rose is like, I can't cope with you, I've got to look after my family and that's when he leaves and does all the other stuff. And then at the end of that he goes, oh right, time machine. And that's when he travels back to pick up Rose again. He goes, oh, it also travels in time, by the way.
Yeah.
So what we'd be seeing in the episode with Clive is technically like the second timeline of the whole thing because like time will have been rewritten.
No, makes sense.
I think I like that one a lot better because I like the idea of the Doctor like going and doing some time traveling and then going, maybe I should have told her about time travel. I'll do that now.
Yeah.
It's fine. For her, it'll be fine.
Yeah, I wonder. Again, like, would he have had time? Well, I mean, he's a time traveler, right? So I guess even if he'd just come out of the Time War, maybe he could have theoretically gone and done all that stuff.
It's possible, but the only thing with that is he would have to have never once seen himself at any point throughout any of that stuff. We learn about 3 things that he did. It can be interpreted he did a lot more. He went to Krakatoa, which it's feasible that there wouldn't have been any mirrors or anything like that around there. So that's fine. He goes to the assassination of JFK, which again, if he's just been through the Time War, he's like, you know what I want to do? I want to go like witness an assassination. That he's in that kind of headspace. I'll let it slide. But the Titanic one is the one that gets me because he's not wearing his traditional leather coat and garments. He's wearing like 1910s outfit. So he would have had to have either dressed himself or gotten someone else to dress him, and there almost definitely would have been a full-length mirror to look at. Because you got to examine the outfit and that. Which makes me think that it must be all the Auton stuff first.
And then
But like, I don't know. It at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think...
It doesn't hugely impact... It doesn't break any massive plot holes in the episode.
No, I don't think...
It's just a strange quirk of the timeline.
Yeah. And again, like, I mean, I assume Russell T Davies had, quite a lot of his backstory planned out at that point. But again, this is the first episode. We didn't know anything about the Time War at that point. So yeah, I don't think... I understand why you point them out. I wouldn't say that they're, your arguments, I wouldn't say that they're genuine nitpicks, but as you say, I don't think it's hugely important, given that they're not these gaping plot holes that are contradicting the timeline in any way.
No, and there are easy enough ways you can... Like my whole philosophy surrounding plot holes, it's like, it's only a huge problem if you notice it in the episode. Like, if you notice it during your first watch through, that's a huge problem. And it sort of gets with too many plot holes. Like, the easier you can explain away a plot hole using in-universe information, even if they don't do it in the episode itself, to me, like, I can easily overlook those kinds of things. It's only if you need to assume things that aren't established about the world in order to make a plot hole not a plot hole, that's when they start mattering a lot more to me.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah. No, that's a pretty fair argument.
But yeah, I think that the Ninth Doctor is... It's difficult because, like, you hear about how, I wish that the Ninth Doctor got an extra season or two. Like, it would have been nice to have seen this character, for a bit longer. I think that the Ninth Doctor's arc only works as well as it does because it is one season. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like
yeah,
he
no,
goes through
I can get that.
the entirety of first series of the revived era is getting the Doctor back to having to choose between killing all the Daleks and letting having a lot of collateral damage as a result, or
Mm.
to not do that. That's the entire structure of this season. It's to get his character growth through Rose and through Jack and through the people he meets and through all that stuff. Uh, and get him to make a different decision that time, and that's really effective, and it works super well by the end.
To kind of, in a way, sort of to hold on to his humanity, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, he had to become literally, as we now know, a very different person in the Time War, and this entire
yeah,
series is about getting him back to being the Doctor again. Really.
yeah.
Um,
And oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, my thinking is just that at that point, um, I know that in a certain sense, uh, once you get into the second series, the writers realistically would know that, it's a different actor now. We've got to write for this actor instead. But I just can't imagine the Ninth Doctor doing an episode like The Girl in the Fireplace, for example.
Yeah, yeah,
Like the stories of the first season they're all Earth-based and space stations orbiting Earth. And I think that's for a reason. Like, they're all very, self-contained stories about, about Earth and Earth's history. And the Doctor, as I discovered a couple of years ago, he doesn't do an awful lot uh, to actually resolve a lot. Like, he does a lot, obviously, but ultimately, to resolve the final conflicts of a lot of these stories, it often comes down to either a companion or a side character who the Doctor has influenced to do better. And I
yeah,
think that's another strength of this arc, I think, because it then leads in again that all leads into the influence on him as a person,
mhm.
where he's seen other people be better. Now it's his turn to be better.
Yeah. I think keeping it thematically consistent in that sense is actually one of the better qualities of this season. And
I
even and
agree.
we'll discuss this later, of course.
Mm,
But even with
yeah,
Dalek, for example, when Rose basically says, you know better than the Dalek, that's a key moment.
yeah, it's a huge moment.
For this Doctor specifically, and for the Doctor as a character,
Yeah,
more generally, because
I will say
oh yeah,
this. I will say this though. As much as obviously the Ninth Doctor isn't my favorite Doctor. I've said this before. There's Doctors I like better than him,
there you
but
go.
I legitimately think that and I haven't seen a lot of the classic series, obviously, but out of the revived series, I think that this is the strongest performance for a first episode of a Doctor. I don't think that any other actor has nailed it as quickly as Nine did.
I there's part of me that wants to disagree with you there, but yeah, I can understand why you would say that at the very least, because I mean, I do really enjoy the Christmas invasion, and you could argue this also has something to do with the writing, but as light an episode as Doctor Light an episode as Rose is, Christmas Invasion is even more Doctor Light, and we don't
Yeah,
get to see the Doctor do heaps, except for he obviously comes in and saves the day, and then there's that great speech at the end where the spaceship gets blown up and he gets all understandably upset by
yeah.
that. But in terms of certainly in terms of performance, sort of making the performance unique, but also being true to who the Doctor is. Yeah, I
Hmm.
can't.
Well,
Yeah,
I should clarify. I don't think that I don't think any of the first episodes generate a weak performance from any of the main Doctors.
mm,
It's just that, and I think this is also a byproduct of the fact that Eccleston did only get one series.
mm.
A lot of what would make their Doctors unique isn't really present in those opening episodes because they usually take about a season or two to really find, uh, you know, the hook of the new Doctor. Like Tennant is probably the closest out of all of them, um, but even then, like there's a lot of aspects to the character that get a little bit more pronounced as series 3 and 4 go on. Matt Smith, in his entire first season, he's written an awful lot like David Tennant's Doctor. You'll probably discover this a bit more when we rewatch it, but there's a lot of stuff in Series 5 where it really feels like David Tennant's Doctor could have done it, and then when we get into more of Season 6 and 7, it really feels like, okay, no, this is you know, the 11th Doctor distilled. Yeah. Peter Capaldi is a very unique case because in his first season he was a grumpy curmudgeon, and then in Series 9 they changed him to be the cool uncle, and he was infinitely better for it.
Yeah, I always, again, my viewing of the Revival series for a number of reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into eventually, it's been a bit spotty.
Sporadic.
It's certainly not as consistent as yours. But even I noticed that, with Capaldi's performance, that he was cranky, cantankerous, older guy, and then he just changed to sort of whimsical, fun Merlin type, which was a little jarring, but anyway, I'm sure we'll discuss that when we get to it.
Yeah.
The point is, so yes, I think you're right to point out that even though none of the Revival's performances in those first stories were bad, Eccleston's probably is the strongest. And again, maybe that has something to do with the writing as well, but I think even just basing it on his performance alone, it's pretty damn good. And as you say, I think it's certainly the highlight of the episode. He really kind of embodies all those qualities that we expect from the Doctor. He's whimsical, but he's also really serious, and he balances those two qualities really well, which I think can sometimes be a hard thing to do. And
like it's a very delicate balance, and I think he hits it really well. I think in particularly during that one tracking shot that you're talking about, there's a moment where he and Rose are joking about why mannequins are invading, and they're having a bit of a laugh, and then he instantly switches to, they're trying to kill you all.
Yeah, which is, again, that's part of the writing as well, which is great that he's written like that, but again, the performance just anchors scenes like that. Really just sort of
I think that
it's home.
Yeah, I think we've been putting this off long enough. Let's talk about Rose now.
Yeah. Okay.
You go first, because I'm going to have a lot more to say.
I don't doubt it. Look, she's in this episode in particular. She's fine. She's she's fun. She's meant to be, I think, very much a likable, identifiable character for the audience. Her personality, it's not hugely defined. I certainly don't think it's as strongly defined as other companions like Donna or even Martha, for example. But it works. I like the bit at the end where she says, "Oh, but I got a bronze medal at the gymnastics thing." And goes and
Is that, you say you like that dialogue, or?
Yeah, I thought it was fine. I assume from those disgruntled noises that would bother you, but
the thing is, that line has always stuck out to me. Primarily because, she's meant to be rushing to, save the Doctor, and she's taking the time to monologue to herself about a bronze medal in gymnastics she won 10 years prior. But also, I think in terms of in-universe, that line makes no sense for her to say in that moment. It's clearly there to be I'm telling the audience that this is what I've been... the entire episode I've been going, I don't have a future, I've got no jobs, no A-levels, no future, blah, blah. And then even then in-universe, it's very weird to turn around and go, hey, I've got no future career prospects, but I do have a 10-year-old gymnastics third place medal, so I guess I'm fine. That's never made sense to me in that context.
Yeah,
but
no, it's a good argument, honestly.
But also, but there's more, because looking at the line out of universe, what purpose does that line serve?
Yeah, except for exposition, which you could argue actually is a shame.
Well, there actually is a purpose that line serves, and that for me, that line has always served as a purpose to be like, don't worry, guys, she can swing on a rope. Like, I know you haven't seen her do it yet, but she won a gymnastics. She can do this. This isn't, like, like, they don't set up before that point that she can swing on a rope, and in fact, she never does it again.
Yeah.
If her gymnastic abilities came back in the future, that line wouldn't stick out as much. But that is literally the only time it ever does. So it basically is out of character for her to do that. So the very thing that the line was meant to do, sell it that she can do this, is in itself the reason why it's out of character.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm reading too much into that one line, but it's always stuck out at me as like it's always been so out of place, especially because they edit it to show like, hey, also while she's doing this, while she's telling herself and the audience that she got third place in gymnastics 10 years ago so she can swing on a rope, her mother is literally getting lined up execution style by a bunch of autons.
Yeah.
So maybe pick up the pace a little bit with that. Sorry, you were in the middle of talking about Rose. I just had to get that out of the way.
And it's actually a good point. And again, I think I kind of liked it because I don't know, it's a fun little quirk. It's a nice bit of backstory, I guess. But you're not wrong to point out that it really does stick out. And it makes you wonder because, for example, one of the criticisms I have of Chibnall's era, for example, is there is just way too much exposition. For a whole number of reasons, whether it be scene setup, characterization, or just giving pure exposition on backstory, which we don't need. It's an issue. So you could argue, well, if it's not okay for Chibnall, it's not a great thing for Russell T Davies to do, which is a shame because in terms of not needing exposition and showing us all these qualities of these characters, he's pretty good. And he's...
Oh, yeah, no, he's generally pretty good at setting everything up in a way that, you don't need it spoon-fed to you.
And he's pretty good with it even in this episode. And again, I go back just to the direction. There's even small details, like the fact that one of the first shots, I think, of Rose, not the first one, but one of the first, is her just in the mall, and we see a mannequin in the background, which is just a great little foreshadowy detail. So it makes you wonder why they couldn't have maybe... I know, because she wakes up, I think, in her house, like, twice. So, if she was good at gymnastics, could maybe they've had, like, some trophies? Or if she was really proud of that medal, could it have been, I don't know, in the shot? Or could they have, you know what I mean? They could have both...
And maybe it was, but the fact that they didn't focus on it
made it so that line does stick out as literally just, I can do this. I'm not just about to, go swinging. And one of the, I think, other issues with that detail is she doesn't, like, she's reflecting on that moment in feeling that she's, sort of an underachiever. But if you wanted to show that she had the tenacity to really do that, surely you would want to establish that earlier. Like, I get that they don't...
Yeah.
It's obviously difficult because it's first episode. They only have a certain amount of time they can devote to all this stuff. But if you wanted to show that she wants more from her life, couldn't they have done it earlier in the episode in a more foundational, nuanced way?
Well, here's the thing. Like, basically the entire episode is about setting her up as, like, this everyday girl.
Yeah.
Like, the entire, like, the first 2 minutes is this quick montage of her life. And it's, it serves its purpose. It gets across, this is just a regular 19-year-old. She has a job. She has a boyfriend. She lives with her mom. We see her everyday routine in 2 minutes, and it's very effective.
Yeah.
As soon as she loses her job, and she has that conversation with Plastic Mickey in the restaurant, about, so is this what my life is going to be now, just serving out chips, whatever.
Yeah.
And, like, she's completely resigned to that. Like, it's not like what they should have done to show that she is at least someone who will, take action is the next day, like, we should have seen her job hunting. Rather than just, like, she wakes up, she slumps back in the bed, and then she does basically nothing until the doctor gets there. We should have seen her either on the phone or online, looking for a job, looking for work, that would
Or
have at
do,
least shown
yeah,
that.
or doing something more.
Yeah, because here's my. I know that everyone's on tenterhooks. Like I'm about waiting for this Rose rant, and I don't
Yeah,
want to give it yet
yeah,
because Rose in this episode is fine. You know,
yeah,
she serves a purpose. She does a whole thing. It is a little bit weird that she dismisses Clive when he says alien, even though she's just seen a whole lot of weird stuff in the course of the last day and a half.
yeah. Just
And
dismisses
alien
him
is
as
where
like
she
a
draws the line.
yeah, and she's like,
Like,
oh well, he's obviously
like
just one of these
she
online
sees,
kooks. So
yeah, she sees visual evidence of the same man across centuries, but then
yeah,
is like, well, it can't be extraterrestrial. I'm just going
yeah,
to abandon the whole search now.
and yeah,
But I suppose, but like she's fine for the majority of the episode. She does her thing. She's
yeah,
looking into the doctor. Uh, it's all fine.
yeah,
But then that restaurant conversation where she's like, I've got no ambition, I've got no future, and I guess I'm just resigned to that. Like, this is a character with zero ambition, and that ends up being her only character trait until she meets the doctor. And then her character trait becomes revolved around him. Her whole deal is, eventually she will fall in love with him, and that will be her entire thing. She will become attached to the doctor in such a way that I find icky and gross. And I mean, we'll get to this later, but
we
I've
will.
never once liked it when the doctor has had any kind of romantic relationship with a human. I've never
Same,
liked it.
same
It got
actually.
River Song got away with it because she was basically half Time Lord and she was a match for the Doctor.
Mm,
But I didn't like it when the Doctor and Rose had their thing. I
mm,
didn't like it when Amy came onto the Doctor in that one episode. Martha got away with it as well because her arc was all about, you know, letting that go and moving past it.
mm.
I didn't like it when they would tease that Clara and 11 were into each other, and I hate that they're going in that direction with 13 and Yaz, and I don't like how that's going to resolve itself inevitably badly.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I've just never. It's the whole Twilight thing for me, where it's like, you know, this 19-year-old and this 900-year-old.
Yeah, yeah, that's understandable. I've never been a fan of the romance stuff either for I think slightly different reasons. Because I just think,
Mm.
the Doctor, he's not human. They, I suppose, rather they're not human. So to see them sort of, I don't know, what would be the phrase? Sort of participating in these very sort of
Yeah.
human emotions, it just gets kind of frustrating and gets in the
Well, I mean, there's
way.
nothing wrong with the Doctor having human emotions, because
No,
it's
no, no,
obviously a huge part of the
but this
character, but
specifically, there's just something about it that just has always kind of bothered me. And I know that this is maybe again this is some of my classic series bias coming in, but that was never part of the classic series.
well, no, it wasn't.
So
My thing, because I think it's not unreasonable to say that the Doctor, like, you know, the Doctor clearly has an attachment to humanity.
yeah, yeah,
He comes back. They come back to Earth constantly. The Doctor, you could say the words, "The Doctor is in love with humanity," and
yeah,
I would completely accept that.
yeah,
To then
absolutely.
narrow it down and say the Doctor is in love with this specific human,
Mhm.
that's always been like, why?
Mm,
What's the point?
yeah,
Why would you do that?
yeah,
And yeah.
yeah,
I mean, we're gonna like I said, this episode isn't that fun to talk about my Rose hatred because again, she's not bad in this episode. We actually do see her taking, you know, proactive steps, like when she pulls the
yeah,
fire alarm to get everyone out the restaurant
yeah,
when Plastic
yeah. That
Mickey
was
starts
good.
attacking.
That was good.
Like that's a nice moment of you know, actually taking proactive steps. It's a
Yeah,
shame that in the future a lot of that's going to go, and a lot of her proactive steps are going to be replaced with, "I'm going to take you to the doctor and he'll tell you what to do."
yeah. That's
Um,
it is a bit of a curiosity, and you're right to point out
mm,
even a little detail like the fact that she pulls the fire alarm. It's her, again, being proactive, taking an active role in her life, and a good contrast to the whole characterization of her up to that point because she's kind of realized, her life isn't terribly interesting at the moment. So the fact that
yeah,
she's taking that step is quite good. And you could argue, in a way, that's actually a better bit of characterization than the little monologue she gives because we're just
yeah,
seeing her do it. We don't need her to actively
Yeah, so,
explain it.
yeah. It's not like when she pulls the fire alarm. She's like, like it'd
I
be
remember
so.
I remember when there was a fire at school once, and I was the one to pull the alarm, and I
Yeah,
saved everybody. No,
I always knew that when the teacher asked me specifically to go pull that fire alarm, they were telling me to do it for a reason, and now that reason is fulfilled. Bang! Everyone out the building.
no, as you say, it's a good bit of characterization. Again, showing not telling really works on a basic level. And again, because my viewing of the Revival series, as I said, has been sporadic. I mean, I've seen every episode up until Matt Smith came along, but it's been a while since I've watched the show. So all these issues with Rose's character and not taking an active role, I have no doubt we're going to get into them later on as we
Oh yeah,
progress.
I fully intend as we go on to keep a times Rose has been captured or trapped count because it's ridiculous. Um, but yeah, I think that also largely this episode it does a good job selling why the Doctor would invite Rose to be a companion. Because like we do see them like in their conversations and the fact that she's inquisitive and
Yeah,
she
yeah, she's curious.
occasionally will do something that helps. And she, uh, well, she's the one that figures out that the London Eye is a transmitter.
Yeah,
She's clearly competent here.
yeah.
And I stress here because again, we'll
Mm,
delve into more of it
mhm,
when the episodes progress, and she doesn't really change except for bad reasons, in my opinion.
mhm.
Do you want to talk about the other elements of this episode? Let's talk about the autons real quick.
Yeah, sure. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. They don't. This is the only Auton episode of the Revival series, isn't it? I don't think.
The autons appear in the Pandorica opens in series
Right.
5. They're not the focus of that episode. They're just
Mm.
there as like, oh,
One of the
they're
villains. Yeah.
one of the villains who
Yeah.
the Alliance used to trap the
Yeah.
Doctor.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the only time the Autons are a big focus in
Yeah.
revived era Who.
Mhm.
I've always found it strange that the Revival is afraid of using the word Auton.
Yeah, actually, because I don't know. Maybe you could argue that it's because it's kind of a weird canon word, but then again, so is the Nestene consciousness.
Yeah, because like if you were afraid of using alien
I did actually
words, why
find that
would you?
curious when I was watching it that they didn't use the Nestene consciousness.
Well, they use Nestene consciousness. They just didn't use Auton.
Yeah.
The
Um,
Autons are listed in the credits as Autons created by this person.
but they're not literally
They're never called Autons in
like
episode.
the doctors and literally saying, yeah, those mannequins, they're called Autons. Yeah,
Yeah,
which is curious. And again, I
yeah. I
don't know
think
whether it's, yeah,
well, I think
sorry.
it might be because there might have been confusion for new viewers, being like, but wait a minute, the Nestene consciousness is going to send a signal to awaken mannequins that were already made, so they're not technically an alien race, but if we call them Auton, it's going to imply that they arrived and then infiltrated the department stores.
Yeah,
Because like Auton is a specific word for something that has been animated by the Nestene.
yeah,
So I kind of understand that
yeah.
saying they're the Autons would imply a bit more than they actually are.
Not, yeah, so I think it probably was just a case of not overloading the audience with, I suppose, what you could call canon fodder.
I like that term. That's
Um, but yeah, but that kind of makes sense because again, they're trying to hook in new viewers, and as we've said, they do a pretty good job of it, given that this is the first episode.
yeah,
The fact that they've got this mystery surrounding the Doctor helps it a lot. Um,
yeah.
and
And also
even
I think that
sorry,
the Autons are I think are a good villain for the
Mm,
revival because commercialization would have gotten so much more broad in the 16 years between the show's cancellation and revival. And it's also kind of that thing of like it would make new kids watching the show do a double take. It's kind of thing that Doctor Who loves to do, where it takes the
yeah,
mundane and makes it scary.
yeah,
We're going to see that in the future with the Weeping Angels
yeah, they do it very well.
predominantly.
Yeah.
So it's going to make any kids who were like out and about with their parents shopping the next day would have done a double take at every
Yeah,
mannequin
yeah,
they walked past, which I think is one of the big strengths of the show.
yeah. It
That whole hiding behind the couch.
hiding behind the sofa mentality, which Doctor Who to varying degrees, but has always been kind of good at, and at the very least, very heavily focused on. Um, and the Autons, and I think I even remember when I was a kid when I watched it. Yeah, I was pretty unsettled, and then whenever we would go, me and my family would go to the mall, for example, and I would see the mannequins, I'd always just remember, that episode and even some classic era episodes where they had it. So it's a good, uh, they're really good in concept. They do work. They are quite chilling. And another thing that I think is a strength for, especially this first episode, is the Autons themselves and even the nesting consciousness. They don't really have much of a personality. They're just kind of, well, I mean, that's kind of the point. They're mannequins. They're like blank slates. That's one of the reasons why they're so scary, because you don't know what they're feeling. They're just these terrifying, silent, plastic army sort of coming for you. But there's not too much personality, but that's a good thing because it doesn't distract from the focus of the show, the episode and the season, which is the Doctor and his relationship with Rose and humanity generally. So I think that's a strength, and I think they were smart to go
Yeah.
with the Orc for that reason. It would have been
And,
a problem, for example, if they opened up with a Dalek episode. That just
oh yeah, you couldn't do that.
no, because it
I
would have
also
been
think it was
too yeah.
I also think it was smart to have because like we mentioned earlier that the story really takes a back seat in this to the Doctor and Rose bonding stuff. But I do think that like it was smart to have like the motive behind the Nestine invasion just sort of hinted at because like it's occasionally it's mentioned briefly
Mm,
like the Nestine's planet was destroyed in the war. They want to come here. Like all the audience really needs to know is they're invading. But like to get every now and then the little oh no it's because of the time war.
mm.
It's just that extra little thing on a rewatch. I think that is something that enhances the rewatchability of this
Yeah,
episode. Where it's like oh no
absolutely.
in context of the stuff that we now know happened. It's not just like a bog standard
Yeah.
an alien invasion. It
Which it could have
is,
been,
but
but
it has like a bit of a larger context.
yeah,
Um,
that fits in with the backstory, which they've obviously they they obviously go into it in a lot more detail in later seasons, but that's the running theme throughout this time war, how much it's impacted the universe, how much it's impacted the Doctor as well. And I have to say, you're right to point out that these little details are important because for me, and it's not just true with Doctor Who, it's not even just true with TV and movies, it's true with every um, piece of art, I think, is that the strength of a work of art, like a really good, meaningful one, it's not just a simple matter of rewatchability or reviewability or re-listenability, whatever it is. It's the ability for the audience to come back to it and notice new details in it every time they watch it. And while you could argue that that's a detail that you would pick up on a single rewatch, the fact that it's there and helping to underscore all of these pretty weighty themes of war and trauma and things like that really enhances the episode and the series as a whole. So you're definitely right to point that out, I would say.
mm. um, I'm just trying to think. Is there anything else that you feel like there's a pressing need to discuss surrounding this episode specifically?
I don't think so. I think we've covered um, most
Oh,
of it.
we do get introductions to Mickey and Jackie in this
Yes,
episode, but I
yes,
think it's going to be more interesting to talk about them when we get to aliens in London because they've got
yep,
a much more pronounced role in that
yep.
story and
They
moving
they
forward.
do.
So I think we'll save the discussions about Mickey and Jackie
Yeah,
for then.
I do think
Um,
they were introduced pretty well. Jackie in
yeah, they're introduced
particular,
well.
just bits of just little nuances in her dialogue which are quite funny, and they give a real picture as to who
Yeah,
she is
Camille
as
Kadori
a
does a good
person.
job
Yeah.
in this episode. I think
Mm.
that Noel Clarke has said that he regrets uh, parts of his performance in this episode because I think it's very noticeable. He plays the character of Mickey in this episode very differently to how he'll play it moving forward.
Yeah.
There's a lot about the character that changes, which can be explained with the 1 year time jump when we get around to aliens in London.
Yeah.
It's just a shame that Noel Clarke has come out. It's been revealed that Noel Clarke is a really bad person in recent years, so I can't really enjoy Mickey that much anymore. But oh, you didn't hear about that?
I vaguely remember reading something about it once. I can't remember the details of it.
Right. I might end up just cutting that whole bit out. It's not.
Yeah. No.
We'll discuss it.
Yeah. We'll get it
when we actually have the information in front of us. We'll get around to it.
Yeah, but that's perfectly fine. It's a. I know it was something serious, so yeah, that's fine. We can just cut
sure.
that out.
I really like Clive.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a really good one-off character.
Oh, actually, that reminds me. There's one little bit which I did laugh, and again, it's just one of the details that I noticed now on a rewatch. When Rose shows up, Clive's house, and his wife comes down, and she says, "Oh, she is interested about this stuff from the website, and she's a woman." I just thought, I don't know, I feel like there's something almost meta there, that they're trying to comment on the fact that maybe at that time, how should I phrase this? They were, I don't know, conscious of the fact that Doctor Who up to that point may not have had a strong female audience, and I don't know whether that was meant to be an ironic comment on that or what, but it just, I don't know, made me giggle a little bit. So
yeah, I mean, I can't comment on the state of the general audience watching Doctor Who at the time. I'm given to understand that at least early on in the 60s and 70s era, it appealed to the majority of the TV audience of Britain at the time. I do kind of understand that, like, especially in the gap between the revival and the classic era, it might have started to appeal mainly to sci-fi, like to major sci-fi fans, who at the time, for whatever reason, like it's the same reason that the Big Bang Theory ran with the premise that it did. You know, the four male geeks and the one female outsider who doesn't know anything about that stuff.
Yep.
I'm happy that trope has been abandoned.
Oh yeah.
In recent years.
Yeah.
As the nerdcore franchises have started to become a lot more mainstream.
Yeah, I would agree.
But you know, I do like Clive.
Yeah.
I just like, I think just from his first interaction with Rose, like he's clearly just a really nice guy. He's super friendly, and he's accidentally fallen down this rabbit hole of
weird.
You know, who is the Doctor?
Semi-conspiracy thing, yeah.
And it's just also great because you just know that if this episode was made, like maybe not even now, like. If this episode was slightly later, they would have given Clive, I met the Doctor once as a kid and now I'm trying to find him again.
Yeah, they would have, actually. Yeah, like a Love and Monsters sort of a deal, yeah.
A Love and Monsters, and also it happened in A Good Man Goes to War as well. There was a character like that there. As that side of the character started becoming a bit more fleshed out, I really appreciate that it was just like, no, he's just a regular guy who accidentally found, like, two people who looked the same and then started digging deeper.
Yeah.
And also he just has a family.
Yeah.
Like, it's just nice. I think it would have been interesting if he hadn't died, like to see him come back. Like there's a lot of the series 1 episodes are based on Earth.
Or around it or helping it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to the point where I just wanted to see him meet the Doctor. Like I just want to know what his reaction to meeting the Doctor would have been. I was really sad when... I always get a little upset when he dies.
Yeah, and but in a way, thematically it's kind of good because it sort of shows that, as the Doctor says, when Rose asks, is it always this dangerous? And he says, yes, there's a human cost to all this. So I think that it's good that they sort of remind the audience of that. And you really do at that point. I mean, because he's a very small character, even in the context of the episode, but you get... quite a lot of nuance and understanding of who he is. You really, you do care about him.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
there's also just the way that it's executed. Like the Autons start to come to life,
hmm,
and he has that moment of like, I was right. Like
yeah,
it's all true. And
yeah,
then the Auton like readies the weapon, and in that moment he realizes, oh yeah, if it's all true, that means that the death aspect must be true. Like he has that moment where it sort of sinks into him, and he sort of resigns himself to it. And I've always found that like super like upsetting. Like it's such a chilling way to go out.
yeah. Yeah, it's quite a sad moment, and I like how the fact that like the way he's incorporated into the episode, it works really well, and it doesn't feel shoehorned in. He's not around any longer than he needs to be. He helps with plot and characterization, and I don't know. I just feel like it would be easy to kind of mess that up in some way, to not have him playing an effective enough role in the story, or I don't know. Yeah, I like how they situated that.
Yeah, I mean
Because
also
as you
like
said,
you need to show that the Autons are a genuine threat. So you need to see them
mm,
killing people. You might as
yeah,
well have them kill an established character just to really make it even
yeah,
more, uh, chilling and really set them in as a threat.
yeah. Um, and one that's established, but not like one of the main characters, so you can afford to kill them off. And in that way, Clive is kind of like he's the best of both worlds in that sense. That you do, on one hand, you do really care about him, but because he's not, the main cast, you can afford to kill him off and really sort of give the audience that kind of gut punch, which is, as I say, very useful in terms of plot and definitely characterization theme. So yeah, it's a small detail in the episode, his character and his characterization, but it's good to point it out because I think it's um, he's quite a good character, as
Hmm.
you say, and I'm glad that again they incorporated him into the episode as well as they did.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think there's. Oh yeah, there was one more thing I wanted to point out. The Photoshop of Chris Eccleston in the JFK crowd, like it's clearly not an amazing Photoshop job that they did. Um, you know who did that?
Who? I'd love to know.
Russell T Davies. He did that himself, and he's acknowledged that yeah, that's why it looks bad. It's because I did it, and I have no skills.
That's funny. Another little detail actually about that. I think I'm getting this story correct. So JFK assassination, 22nd November 63. Doctor Who premieres 23rd November 63, and I
Yep.
think it was meant to premiere on the 22nd, but because JFK had died, they obviously were running a lot of news on it, so they decided to delay it a day. Now, I don't know whether that's a deliberate little nod to that by Russell T Davies. I'm not sure, but it's, I don't know, just something of interest, I suppose.
It's something I'm sure he must have been aware of.
Probably.
So I think it might be a nod, if not just because like I said before, why on earth would he choose to go there?
Mm. Yeah, that's true, actually.
Like
Um,
he's obviously not there to stop it from happening.
yeah,
God forbid there's a story we didn't see where someone alters history so it didn't happen. He has to go and make sure it does.
yeah.
God forbid that we hopefully we never see that story if that happened. Yeah, is there anything else you think we need to comment on with
I,
Rose? I think we've covered most of it.
I think we have. I think that's just about Yeah, that's just about it. I can't think of anything else major because, again, as you say, like it is a good episode. Certainly good enough for given it's the first episode and it introduces everything, and it does so without again overloading the audience with, as I said, cannon fodder or trying to over-explain everything, and having that air of mystery surrounding the Doctor works to its benefit.
Yeah, it does. It does what it needs to do. It doesn't do anything particularly poorly, in my
Yeah,
opinion. It's just there are aspects of it that are somewhat dated by today's standards, and that's the only thing that really would put people off. I think.
yeah,
Otherwise, it's like it's very solidly written. It's got good performances.
Yeah.
An excellent hook for the show
Yep.
being, the mystery surrounding the Doctor, as we said. Rose isn't awful yet. She's just kind of there for me
Yeah.
at the moment.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think we covered pretty much everything.
Yeah. And I think,
Do you wanna give your own personal 10 out of 10 score for this
oh,
episode?
yeah, I'd say about a 6 for me because, again, what it's trying to do, it does quite well. And at the very least, given that, this is a big, Doctor Who's a big property, it's got a long history. At the very least, you can say is, by God, they could have done a worse job. So they did it quite well, but again, it just doesn't quite get to um, the levels of quality writing that the show would get to even in the season. And even if it was like I mean, it's hard to imagine it, but even if this was just like a one episode thing of a totally, like if Doctor Who wasn't an established um, property at that point and it just sort of, this episode just came out of the blue, I would still say it's a 6 because again, it's fine. It does what it does. Um, Pretty good nuances with the writing, but it just, even compared to other episodes of TV, I think at the time, it's just not as amazing. It's not terribly groundbreaking. It's not taking huge risks and having them pay off, I don't think. So yeah, I think a 6 is pretty fair.
Yeah, I agree with most of that. It's certainly nothing special.
Mm.
It's not an emotional story. It doesn't make you think all that much. There's no significant allusions to, apart from the obvious one of consumerism. There's not a lot it says uh, about life, which a lot of good sci-fi tends to do.
Mm.
It's just a lot of fun. It's just a fun episode. It's a fun introduction. It's got good characterization. It's got good writing. It's genuinely funny at times. I like how a lot of the humor is still held up really well. Um, it's particularly the Doctor's dismissal of Jackie coming onto him. That
Yeah.
always makes me laugh. But like I said, like it there will be uh, better and more important stories told in this
Yeah,
show. But
absolutely.
it's an excellent springboard of, what the show is and what the show can do. So I think I'd give it about a 7. I think the timescales nailed it pretty much with their 7.1. Like I said,
Fair
there's
enough.
nothing majorly wrong with it. There's just nothing it excels at.
Yeah, yeah, not too much that's exciting, and they would, again, the fact that you've got these Autons, which again they don't have heaps of personality. Um, they're just these, sort of faceless robot things running around killing people, and even the nesting consciousness that you don't hear the nesting consciousness speak at all. Again, I think is part of that. But because of that, it's nowhere near as high concept as the show would become, or even that it had been. Because again, even when you go back to the classic series, there is some really strange, wacky concepts that um, would not make a lot of sense, even uh, I guess stylistically, if you weren't sort of a long-running fan. So
Yeah.
they didn't. Again, like I said, the fact that this isn't a Dalek episode, for example, was a really good call. But because of that, again, they're obviously not taking huge risks. But you can see, even at the end of the episode, when they say, what's on next time, to go from, kind of freaky mannequin invasion to the world is ending, that's a pretty big leap in terms of concept. Um,
Yeah, no, I agree. This episode it does a good job drawing in people who maybe aren't too
yeah,
familiar with science fiction or Doctor
yeah,
Who, being like, we're presenting mainly this story about two people getting to know each other. There just happens to be an alien invasion happening in the background. That's going to draw you in, so
yeah,
that in future episodes we're going to see the world being blown up by the sun,
yeah,
or there's a virus in the air that's making people grow gas masks
yeah. Um,
or futuristic Big Brother. Like, they'll
or
be more willing to accept that kind of stuff when we've
yeah,
laid this groundwork at a relatively standard level.
Yeah. And
So yeah, it's a 7 out of 10 by its very nature. It really
mm,
couldn't afford to strive for
for anything
you
else,
know
yep.
for anything higher because either it alienates people who aren't familiar with the show, or if it misses the mark, God forbid,
Yeah, then it's
it's dead on arrival.
yeah. So they were able to sort of um sort of strip it down a bit to some more basic Doctor Who elements. And in that way, that's why it works, because they were able to get the best of both worlds, excuse me, by luring in the audience with a sense of intrigue, and even using that same intrigue to lure in longtime fans, because even though the Doctor has, to a considerable extent, always been a mysterious person, the fact that he's so kind of like, he's not antisocial, but he is a bit standoffish in this episode, and you can tell. And again, it is credit to Christopher Eccleston's performance. You can tell that there's something weighing heavily on his mind. So even if you're a long-time viewer, that in itself is still quite intriguing. So again, they were able to just execute the story quite well, not have it be anything other than what it was trying to be. Yeah, that makes sense. And in that way, they were able to satisfy both long-term and new fans of the show, which is pretty impressive. Um,
Yeah, I think we did it.
yeah,
That's Rose
yep.
thoroughly discussed.
Rose wrapped up. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Next week, we're going to be taking a look at one of the classic era episodes. As to which one that is, I have not decided that yet. I'm going to have to go through and choose one. Because I actually should mention, in terms of like the format that these podcasts are going to take, we decided to try and do like every first episode to be a revival episode in chronological order, but because there are so many classic episodes, I'm just going to try and pick some ones that are of interest, whether they're really good or really not good, whatever. I'm going to try and pick some good ones to take a look at least for the first while. So yeah, tune in next
Yeah.
week for uh, unidentified classic episode.
Until then, I've been Alex,
I've been Fitz.
and we'll see you next time.